All right. Good morning, everybody. Land. So today you have me as your host. No Brent today, so I decided to fill in. I'm Toddy Norm, and our guest today is Katie Stroud. So Katie is, as you can see, in her RV. She's getting ready to travel. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for taking the time to do that. So I really appreciate it. Looks like people are starting to filter in. So I'm really excited actually to talk to Katie because cool things with story-based learning. And just you guys probably don't know this, but I've been working on my master's. So one of the things that I started researching in my last course was kind of the importance of story-based learning, kind of in a social context. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say today. So anyway, good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
People are starting to filter in. So actually, just real quickly, I was going to tell you, it looks like, and it's Quetzalcoatl, I think that's the right name, posted our information on our upcoming conference, which is going to be in Phoenix this next month. So I'm actually going to be there. I know we actually have a really, really nice attendance number for this conference in Phoenix this year. So I'm excited about that. He also posted the membership link here, which is great if you want to go ahead and become a member and join us formally. But, as you know, most of days we're here for free on the cast. And then we have our Slack channel, which is another of our resources as well. And he also posted the tlbc19.com registration link. So thank you for doing that. Normally Craig does that kind of thing, but I really appreciate reposting those. So anyway, with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you guys to Katie Stroud, although Katie doesn't necessarily need any introduction. I think everybody knows her. So I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Toddy. You'll have to excuse me. I'm a little frazzled. I signed on to a project, so I have to deliver 45 videos by pretty much the end of the month.
Oh, goodness. Holy cow.
I talk a lot about, networking and getting to know people, and I'm really glad that I have over the last few years because I was able to call up a few friends and say, hey, what you doing in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I have a week off for Christmas too, so let me know.
Oh, yeah, excellent. I can get all the help I'll take anything. I'm getting a certain amount of money per video, so I'm splitting that up, so it's kind of like a per task kind of thing. But
cool.
But I have a few people online. The hardest part is writing, and I have to. There's a couple of people that can help me with that, but it's really hard.
Well, and it's a good problem to have, but it's also challenging at this time of year too. So
it is. It's a big client, and it was just something I couldn't turn down. So it's exciting. Not as cool as this makerspace project. I had to kind of set it aside because you get work to do 45 videos by the end of the month, and that's going to take up some time.
Yeah, definitely.
But last April, I met this guy named Richard, and he's trying to kick off a training program for makerspaces. So yeah. And
I got to view that. Actually, I got to see it at DevLearn, so I've been lucky enough to see it. So you want to tell us more about it?
Yeah, so I can. I was just going to reply to Kristen here. Thank you for your condolences. It's yeah. I was up really late, so the frazzledness here. But so I makerspaces. For those of you who don't know what a makerspace is, it's kind of like a public shop class. You go in. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes you pay a membership, but they offer all these tools and materials to just make stuff. I don't know how many of you enjoyed shop class or had a fun dad that let you played with saws and drills and things like that. I didn't, but I got into those things anyway, and I enjoyed making stuff. And I enjoyed shop class, but then I got into writing because I was good at that. But makerspaces, they're a little bit bigger than just a cool place to go to do fun stuff. They're kind of a thing that municipalities, so cities, communities, can use these to draw people in and get people doing stuff that keeps them out of trouble. Like, say you've got a troubled youth in the community. This is something that can give them something to do, and as long as they're not making bad things.
Well, and a lot of the makerspace, they have 3D printers, robotics programs.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, so 3D printers, laser cutters, things for doing really cool stuff in today's modern technology. But some of those things are really dangerous. Like a laser cutter can cut your arm off if you don't know what you're doing. And in a lot of places, they'll just have someone on staff operating that for people. But saws and drills and even sewing machines can get you hurt. You can pierce your finger. You can slice your arm. And this is an issue for makerspaces, and so there's been sort of this rise in makerspaces, like a growing phenomenon, and it's kind of leveled off. And one of the reasons I think that happens is because they don't really have the means to get people trained, to get people to be safe, use the tools safely and effectively. You either have to have people on staff, which end up being volunteers, and volunteer work kind of gets pushed aside, or you're paying people, which is expensive, and maybe you don't have the membership to do that. It's just a problem. So this guy, Richard, that I met about April, May-ish, he's trying to build a training platform. So this platform would be something that makerspaces could subscribe to and offer to their members. And even if we're charging for it, it's way cheaper than paying staff or paying for, lawsuits or whatever that is. But there's a lot of pushback. He's having trouble getting makerspaces to buy onto this idea of it effective. And, one of those reasons is that, you're going to use something digital to do physical things, right? You're wanting people to come in, get the training, and collaborate and get together, and they don't really see the purpose of it yet. So we're having to do things that is going to appeal to to a public audience that is going to be fun, something that they want to do. So Richard had he's a big fan of theater and Lewis Carroll. So Lewis Carroll, author of Alice in Wonderland. And there's this poem, a lesser known thing that a lot of people don't know about, called The Hunting of the Snark. And he thought, so The Hunting of the Snark is, it has a crew of 9 members that all start with the letter B. You've got a bellman and a baker and a butcher and a beaver. There's a beaver. We don't know why. And they're all boarding this ship and going on a hunt for a snark. And a snark, we don't really know what it is, but it's something that you hunt with thimbles and threats of railroad shares. For whatever reason, that's a threat. We don't know. And the map is a blank sheet of paper, which everybody thinks is great because all those lines just get in the way, right? So we're working with this, and he says, a makerspace is like the ship of The Hunting of the Snark, and he's just kind of trying to introduce the training platform as this. So I went and I read The Hunting of the Snark and got familiar with all the characters, and I thought, we could use this. We could give everybody a role and use that to draw in a community. But there's a problem here. They're all white men, except for the beaver, which is a male beaver. So we started to have a lot of fun at that point by recreating the characters and making them just as quirky as Lewis Carroll made them. And well, let me give you a link here. I could share it on here, but I don't know that video shares very well.
Right.
So here's a link. This introduces you to the character Billy. So we now have, instead of 9 or 8 white men and a beaver, we have 4 women, 4 men. They're all of different nationalities. They're all full of diverse backgrounds, and they all have a role. So we didn't want to just, story for the sake of story is great, but how does it serve our purpose? Not only for the business, but for learning. So everybody kind of had a role on the ship. You have tradesmen. You have the bellman is your leader, the project manager. You have the baker. So our baker can only bake wedding cakes, and she's kind of a she's forgetful. So she packed all her stuff. She put it in crates and boxes, and she labeled it all nice and neat. And when it came time to board, she didn't tell anyone that it was ready to go. So she came aboard with only her 3 pairs of boots that she was wearing and 7 coats. And so this was a communication issue. She had a few other communication faux pas, if you will. She later informed the bellman that her uncle had been taken by a boojum. They were hunting for a snark, and they found a boojum, and this causes, or no, someone else said that, and she faints, and so she faints a lot. Anyway, long story short, because she often comes up in the poem as somebody who's communicating or not doing it well. She's our communications manager. And
I love it.
yeah, so actually I can share with you guys. Give me a second here. And this is something you can go and look at later, but this is a link to a description of all of our characters and what their role is in and helping people out. So I can share that if you like, or actually what we're doing there, and talk about any questions or anything you guys want to know about this idea of story. The thing we're trying to do with these quirky characters is draw in a community, give them a backstory. So not only are you part of this makerspace community, but now you're part of the people who know about these quirky characters, and what you get with this sort of inside joke with these guys is you start to get a cult following, which is fun.
Hi guys, did we lose Katie? Katie, did we lose you?
I'm here. So Marco heard me. Do you guys hear me? Okay. Hi, Rick. Rick says keep going, so I'm still online. So yeah, story helps with any questions. Why does story work that way? We were online on Friday with Pierce and Sam Rogers, and they were talking about and kind of wondering how does a story create that emotion and create a memory and get you engaged? So my answer for that, I mean, there's so much piecemeal work on different reasons for why that happens. I mean, you have to look to all different kinds of fields. You got to look into marketing. You've got to look into cognitive learning and research, cognitive behavior, and what else have I looked into? I mean, I've looked into even math and science and neuroscience and just a lot of stuff. It all comes down to, when I tell you something, a story, what goes on in your brain is a mirror of those words that I'm using. So if I'm feeling sad and I'm talking about something painful like a bee sting, even though you don't feel a bee sting, your mind is probably familiar with what a bee sting feels like, and it triggers that emotion. And the more you use words that create texture and feeling and all that stuff, the more you start to put together an entire experience, which is how your brain remembers things. You don't remember like words on a screen. You would remember an experience, which is emotions and your environment and the sounds you hear and the things you feel and touch and see and smell and taste. So I'm babbling a lot. I see that there's one question. I'm going to read what that question is. What makes storytelling so relevant in learning? Well, I was just going to say, have you ever heard of a story that was kind of a bit of this and a bit of that? And there are some out there. There are some strange story, like has anyone ever seen Memento? So Alan has seen Memento. Memento is a story that's told kind of backwards. This character can't remember anything from one day to the next. So every day he wakes up, he has to write notes to himself at bedtime, and then every day he wakes up not knowing where he's at or who he is even, and he has to come across these notes to himself to figure out what's going on. So the story kind of gets put together backwards. But for the most part, most stories are told with a logical sequence of a beginning and a middle and an end. And, go figure, that's good for learning, right? To have a sort of beginning, middle, and an end, to have an experience. Why is an experience more memorable than words on a screen or a document or a slideshow? Because a slideshow, a document, uses a very small part of your brain that kind of translate everything you see into some kind of meaning. So that's good. It's important. We couldn't communicate without that. But what a story does is activates a whole lot more of the brain. You're experiencing touch and feel and emotions and things you don't get from technical words and jargon on a screen, right? Let's see. So what questions do you have? Did you guys watch the video? What did you think? I see Toddy. Do you guys see Toddy? She seems to think I'm not here. Yeah, not anymore. I lost her too. I am copying another video that I posted. This one is unlisted because I wasn't able to finish it, and then it then I lost the file, so I have to go and redo the whole thing. But I used my daughter's voice to create this character. Are you there, Toddy? Do you see me here? Hopefully those gremlins are not contagious to this home on wheels we'll be driving here in a little bit. Okay, so I posted another link to another video. This character's name is Hiromi. So I had fun coming up with names for these characters, because in The Hunting of the Snark, they're just tradesmen. They're bellmen and bakers and butchers and brokers. And Hiromi is the broker. So what's fun about Hiromi is that she's well, the broker, what does the broker do? The broker kind of establishes value for making a trade. And so what's quirky about Hiromi is that everything is beautiful. Everything has value. And the role I wanted her to play in these makerspace trainings is to encourage people to she would be the one to help you find value in everything you do. Everything you do is beautiful. And so in this video, it only has her. She's holding out some stones. I did create a version that actually has those stones that she's pointing to, but in this video, I lost that version. This video doesn't have the stones in it. And she's introducing herself and saying, look at these stones. I think I'm going to put some googly eyes on it. And it's going to be beautiful, and you guys are beautiful. You guys are all going to make beautiful things. And what I wasn't able to finish with that is that the banker. So the banker is, very accountant-like and serious about, hey, beauty is all great and stuff, but that's not going to make us any money. So she kind of rolls her eyes at Hiromi and Sharmila. Sharmila is from India. Hiromi's a Japanese girl, and they have to interact a lot, and they're complete opposites, right? So this is a technique that is used in storytelling, where you don't necessarily describe the characters and what they're like. You kind of show what they're like by having them interact with each other. And this is a technique you guys can use in your own learning stories. I can go on and on about characters and trying to come up with characters and characters that make sense in a corporate training setting. But there you have it. Hiromi is I'm so sorry, Toddy. I don't know if it's just the video or the audio not coming through. Okay, I do have some questions queued. Let's see what those are. All right, so what is a good framework to use when crafting a story? Hey, Myra, I actually have a process, a slide deck, even a template. Let's see. Let me pull that up. I do have a template for thinking about that. Let's see, copy Dropbox link. Okay, and this is really basic. many of you know, I'm working on a book. I kind of got sidetracked by a huge project I'm working on. Maybe heard I have to create 45 videos by the end of the month. But this template is something to get you started, to kind of get the juices rolling. I'm working on a more detailed version of this. But yeah, so I don't know, Toddy, maybe I can share this on the screen? That might work better. How do I do that? Share. There's a share button. I found it. Oh no, that's for sharing the event. That's not sharing my screen. Huh. Well, I don't know how to share my screen. Okay. Well, so hi Mira, I'm aware of creating a story arc and, you know, the hero's journey and all that stuff. And I've probably read about this guy, Kurt Vonnegut, but it's not surfacing right now. I'm sleepy. Let's see. Mira, Toddy's music muted. Okay. I don't know how to share the screen, so I'll just kind of walk through this framework real quick. Here you go. So first of all, should you use story? And if you have that link, you can open the file and follow along. First of all, yes, but you should realize that a story doesn't always look like a story that you see on the screen or read in a book. A lot of the times when you're using story and learning, what you're trying to do is find the story that's already there. We are characters here. Toddy's a character, I'm a character, Myra, Mark Grant, Marco, all of you guys are all part of a story that comes together here every day at 8 a.m. But how do you use that in training? Yes, Alan, you are definitely a character. Okay, so we start with the vision. What are the goals of your organization? I'm trying to do a sort of screen thing where I can see your guys' chat while also looking at this outline. It's not working. Okay. So in this template, just kind of write that down. What's that vision? What are you trying to strive for? And then who's the audience? There are certain things that go on with your audience in the culture, certain signature sayings or things that they do. What are those? How do they interact with other people that might be part of that? If you take your audience and kind of look at them as a network of people that connect with other people that may or may not be part of the audience, your direct audience is going to, if you can get them to share the story that you're trying to teach, then it's a method of storytelling. It's a way of getting those ideas out there and getting people on board with what it is you're trying to tell them. So anything you can use that is them, that makes them who they are and part of this community is something you should capitalize. So what are those things in your audience? Write that down. And then who are your stakeholders? They're kind of a special part of an audience. They're the ones who care about how everything turns out, what's important to them, what are those signature things about them, and how might the culture of those stakeholders be different or similar to the culture of your audience. Just right now you want to write all this stuff out. So how do you take that existing story and then how do you start looking at what kind of a story it is? Well, there are different kinds of story. There is supposedly there's like 7 different kinds of stories. We've got a rags to riches story. We've got the hero's journey, the epic journey, which actually is kind of a framework for all of those stories. To some extent or another, those stories kind of follow a sort of hero's journey. There's the love story, girl meets boy, and however that works out. So, you're not going to use girl meets boy in a corporate story. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can look at a new take on your sexual harassment training and use a framework like that. But what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to explain here is that there's if you take your goal, your vision, and boil it down to what is it you're trying to produce in the end result. Are we going on a journey from doing things an old way to doing things a new way? I mean, that's kind of a common theme in corporate training. Are we looking at an action story where we're trying to increase performance? We're trying to get people engaged more and more active, working harder for whatever reason there's a lull. Are we talking about community? Are we emphasizing characters and how they interact with each other and what they mean to each other? How important is the person doing this role related to another role? So there's a page in the template where you can brainstorm some of those ideas. And then I probably should put this in the end. How do you gain buy-in? I mean, first you kind of have to start looking at the story. So skip down to the page after that. How do you build the framework? So here's where you're looking at some of the key components of putting that story together. So characters, you looked at your audience and some of those quirky things. How do you start putting together characters based on that audience? In our Hunting of the Stark framework, what we need is community, and so that's kind of the idea we went with. We emphasize these characters, and we're creating these characters to interact with each other, and how does that relate to our audience? Well, our audience is a diverse group of people. We have young people, old people, creative people, hardworking people that are trying to invent something and create a business out of it. So we have this huge variety of characters. So what we were trying to do with all these characters is, hey, we got 2 toddies. Is to show how people. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna mute my sound on my other system here. All right. So that's how I worked around on this. I'm on 2 different systems. So
interesting. I wonder why it's not working.
I don't know.
Seems like as a host, you shouldn't be kicked off.
So
anyway.
Until I got on my iPhone, so I'm back, but I'm back in double.
So in the story framework, this was the struggle, the conflict, and you defeated the TLDC gremlins, the crowdcast video gremlins.
All right. So I'm still running the board, which is hilarious. Invite myself in, which is funny. So yes, I defeated the gremlin, so I'm gonna call it a win. That's awesome. I was like, I can't hear Katie, and I know going.
Okay. So we're talking about the framework of a story, and I shared a link to a template. Here, I'll post it again just so that it's there in the bottom again.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
It says, oops, I already sent that message. It won't let me send it because I already sent it. So I made it a little different. So that's a template for figuring out the framework. And I was just talking about characters and how we're using these characters in the makerspace. It's to appeal to a diverse community of characters of people, like the actual people in the story come from all walks of life, young people, old people. They're all creative to some extent. You get a lot of people that go to Comic-Con, so they're there to make really cool costumes and spaceships and things like that, to be, to have fun at a Comic-Con. So really creative people, but still all very different, men and women and people of different nationalities and ages and professional levels. Some people are corporate white collar people, and some are factory workers, and some are housewives. And so with our 9 characters, we're kind of showing how all these very different characters, take for example our butcher. So our butcher can only kill beavers, and we did not find this out until everybody was on the ship and we have a beaver on board the ship. So the beaver is terrified of the butcher, and the butcher knows that he better not mess with this beaver. And in our scenario, they have names. So our beaver is Pinga, and which kind of means like protector. She's our safety agent, because in the poem she saved the crew. We don't know how, but that's what she did. So she's our safety officer. And our butcher is Rain. He's a Northwest hipster, and he only kills beavers because he lived near a pond, and the beavers just wreak havoc. They're always flooding the place, and so his dad would capture the beavers and bring them home for Rain is his name, to take care of the beavers. Our little secret about Rain, the butcher, is that he's actually never killed a beaver. His older brother would end up doing it for him, because Rain just loves creatures, and he can't do it. But he can't ever let his dad know. So as far as everybody knows, he's a butcher that can only kill beavers. In the end, and in the actual poem, the beaver and the butcher become best of friends. So in our story, they're best friends, Pinga and Rain, and they and that's an example. So Rain, who becomes friend with the only creature that he's supposed to kill, he's in charge of everything collaboration wise. How do we work together with all these diverse groups of people? One way to show that is just by example. Rain and Pinga are best friends, but as issues arise later in our stories and our trainings, Rain is responsible for making sure people are working together and getting along. Yes, Alex, that is a spoiler alert. Don't tell anyone, because the interesting thing about how we're telling this story, a lot of people will bring up storytelling. How do you tell a good story? And there's lots of ways to do that. I'm actually, it takes me a while to know the story and work out the details before I can actually tell it and do it well. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. So, but in the sense of a corporate training story that you're trying to tell, the way you tell it is not to tell it. I mean, the first rule of storytelling is don't tell the story. If you can put it out there in a way that gets everybody else telling the story, then you've created magic. And one of the ways we're doing that with the Makerspace story is by telling the story sort of subtly in the trainings. So at some point later in a training on something, and so I'm coming back to this, so just hold on. The things that we train are not always just on how to use equipment safely. We're training on much more than that, like how do you make use of what you created in a makerspace? Can you create value from the things that you make? Makerspaces themselves, how can we increase membership? How can we engage people to work together? And, you know, all kinds of other sort of non-equipment related kinds of trainings. It's going to take a while to get there, but as we create more and more of those trainings, little pieces of the story come out, and somewhere down the line, Rain's big brother comes, and we kind of get a hint of the fact that, oh, he actually doesn't kill beavers at all. So keep that just between us. It's a little secret, because that comes out later. So so yeah, spoiler alert. Alex, yes. Show them the story. We don't want to tell the story. We want to find ways to show the story. And it takes a little bit of planning work up front. So going back to our framework template, media. What tools are we going to be using to tell the story? These are anything from the tools that you create the story, like we're using graphics and animation and Captivate. But then how are you going to distribute it? Are you using an LMS? Are you posting things on walls? You can do things like posters. You can LMS. So I had something really cool in mind. Things like email, audio, podcast. What media do you have at your disposal, and not just what do you have available to use? What can you use? If you have all these resources, but you don't have the people or the budget or whatever to make use of it, you need to think about media in terms of what can you make use of, not just what do you have. And then distribution. How are you going to get the story out there? How are you going to show the story? And there are really, really different and creative ways. This is the best part about using story and training is just getting outside the box of e-learning and classroom training and blended learning and all those trends. There are lots of other ways to engage people at work and teach them. I'm hoping to capitalize next year on a sort of workshop that I'm calling Story Lab, where I invite people to solve a problem out in the workspace. So a key component of a story is your setting. So what is the environment? What is your time frame? What sort of sights and sounds are around, surround your story? What landscape are we looking at? Are we in an office, or are we on site in a construction zone? So for me to tell that story, not to tell that story, but to show you guys how to tell a story, I would give you a sort of lab exercise where you say around story, go and put something out of place at work, and then observe what happens. What happens with your characters? Do they react to it? Do they move it back? Do they say something about it? Does it become a thing? And then we talk about that. So instead of explaining and telling you in training that the setting is really important and it's a big component of how things are remembered, I can show you by saying, try this. It's a really small thing. It's a fun thing. Not only are you kind of experimenting with what happens in the workplace when this happens, you are also engaging the people that you're working with and having some fun and building a culture in showing the story. The story comes to life by engaging people in this way. So that's one really, out there. Like, I mean, who would think of that in any of your training best practices? In how does that teach anyone? Well, the more you become connected with the people you're working with, the more the easier it is to get them on board with the corporate vision and goals and specific tasks. So that's an important part. I mean, a lot of people wonder, why doesn't my training work? Why don't people remember it? And well, how much are you actually engaging them? And that's a huge part of training, is getting people engaged and working together. So let's see, Kristen posted something here. Let me read this. Have you or anyone in the chat ever done a program where you do a group choose your own adventure? After each part of the story, the group votes on what's next, and that determines the next chapter. It seems like it would be hard to make sure you get through the topics you need in a natural progression when you're cleaning up mistakes the characters via the group made, but I think it would be a fun way to do a small company-wide training. Kristen, that's exactly what we're talking about. Think outside the box. If people come to a training expecting a sort of scheduled, we're doing this, this, and this, something like that, a choose your own adventure kind of, okay, we're going to talk about this, and now you need to make a decision about what's next, and here's what that leads to. That's different. That's something unexpected. An example I will tell people once in a while, and it's in the book, is let's say you're taking a nature walk, you're walking along, and all of a sudden a recliner falls out of the sky. That's weird, right? But now a recliner fell out of the sky. What are you going to do? What do you now notice? You suddenly notice everything around you because it's different. You weren't expecting that, and you're not going to forget that. So throwing in unexpected things is a great way, especially at key moments, like when you have something really important that people need to learn. Throw in something random that just doesn't fit, because that's what our brains are actually designed to notice. We don't notice everything that's the same all the time that we expect, because our brains are lazy, and it's not that they're lazy, it's just that there's so much to notice every day on a daily basis that in order to be more efficient and effective at noticing what's important, your brain is tuned to key in on those things that are different, that are unexpected. So thanks, Kristen. That's a great idea. You should try it and come tell us about it and how it turns out on TLDC. Excellent, excellent. Kristen says she's going to try that. Let's see. So I can keep going through the template, but there's just enough information there that I think you guys can find that. And there's a few more questions here and only 10 minutes left. So let me go into this. Do you run into stakeholders who complain that storifying adds unnecessary time to the training? Yes. And sometimes it does. In the case of this makerspace training, it has been time consuming, especially since we're kind of creating the visual animated effect. But in our case, it's important, and it's a good foundation to have to make all the future stuff easier. But to that question, Kristen, if you go in and do a training that's a little less loosely prepared, like with a choose your own adventure, you kind of have your key topics, but you haven't had to meticulously plan each sentence and leave behind that you would use in that, which actually takes less time, because now you're growing a session and organically from what people need more than what you think they need. So in some cases, it's actually going to take less time because it's more integrated into everything that you're doing. And in the sense of the parts of the story in training in an organization that people don't think about, like engaging people, getting people to work together, that's coming up with regular activities on a daily basis. It's ongoing. It's not taking 3 months to plan a training and develop it and get it out there and track it. Teaching using a story, using the existing story, is an ongoing process. You're doing it every day. One piece of the story is taking people out to coffee and finding out what is going on in the organization that you might not have known otherwise. Little things like that. Planning out your day to engage people, and doing it every day and spreading that so that everybody else is also doing that and learning from each other is an ongoing thing. It's not, it's going to take this much time, and because we're doing a story, it's going to take even longer. So it's about thinking differently and, more integrated with the people you're working with. Let's see, another question. Does that answer your question? What is a good framework? So I shared the template for that. Software. I actually didn't get into that. So I created the characters that I shared in the videos using a program called Crazy Talk Animator. So there's Crazy Talk, just plain old Crazy Talk, and I think they're on version like 8, and that actually takes images, like a picture of your face. You do like a front side and a back side, and it turns it into a 3D talking head that you add voiceover to, and it automatically moves the mouth, and you can move the head and record it and have this sort of max headroom. Am I dating myself with that? Do people remember Max Headroom, the talking head computer guy? If you're too young to remember that, go look it up. It's funny. But there's Crazy 8. So that's not what I used. What I used was Crazy Talk Animator, version 3. Here's a little secret. If you go and sign up for a trial, it's something like $200 to buy it. But if you sign up for a trial, within the 30-day trial, they send you an email to purchase it for 50% off. Plus, they give you a great deal on a package of characters and settings or whatever it is. So the pro, I think they call it pipeline version of, like the high version of it is $200, but for $250, I got the pro version and a package of characters and scenes for $250. So for $50 more, I got a whole lot more, like a lot more. So, hey, there's Richard. So Richard Seville, thanks for joining us. This is the guy leading up the whole makerspace training platform movement. So say hi to Richard. Thanks for joining us. He's he's fabulous. Just a creative guy, fun to work with. And so he's been able to take the characters I created. So because we're doing something unique, I went and created all 9 characters in so you would create it in Illustrator, but Illustrator is expensive. So I've been using a program called Affinity Designer, which is almost like Illustrator, and I think I paid $50 for it, one-time fee, and it's really powerful. It does almost everything that Illustrator does. So I created these 9 characters in Illustrator. So now we have what we call puppets, and you use these puppets in this Crazy Talk animator. So it has bones, and you move the bones around and make that all happen. Thanks, Toddy. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you.
So
yeah.
I think I jinxed my computer. I was looking at other computers in the Christmas special aisle last night. So I think that's what happened is my computer audio card is going bad. So there you go. So, but you know what? Who needs Toddy when you have Katie? Because Katie can come in and tell the whole story anyway. So it's all good. Excellent. Well, I'm really excited for you guys. This is a wonderful project. I mean, I was so glad to get to see it at DevLearn, and I'm really glad you got to come on and talk about it. So I have to tell you, I really relate to what you were saying about the beavers, by the way. I used to live right next to a beaver dam, and that beaver dam flooded my property and caused me to have to create all kinds of drains. And I was not allowed to build anything because of the beavers. I had to engage in wetlands delineation studies in order to build. But you know what? We found a way to coexist. So I was just thinking that like this is kind of a story about coexisting as well, and you know, dealing with diversity. I couldn't kill the beavers because they were protected by mass law. So.
Right.
Too funny.
Right, and it's possible that they were even protected in Rain's neck of the woods, because we are on the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty interesting stuff. Well, I guess I'll let you wrap up. We're getting close to the top of the hour, but this has been awesome. I've been hearing you, but I couldn't be in the window.
There are more questions in here, and I could go on and on about all of these things. So there's actually a friend in a local friend, a podcaster that for our local ATD chapter, we've been talking about getting together to do a sort of regular show where I can carry on the story and talk about these things. Do this sort of, I want to kick off this story lab. I need to get a little more organized to make that happen, but more, you know, questions like, what was the most difficult thing you had to storyfy? I mean, I could do a whole session on that, and you know, maybe I can do some blog posts on these things. But it's a really big topic. I'm really pushing to get the. Okay, I'm not pushing because I have paid work that I have to get done, but I have 10 chapters written of my 14 chapter book drafted. I have to go back and rewrite them and everything, but it's going to have a lot of these details, and I'm finding that even when that gets done, there are still more topics to kind of work through that, and maybe we start creating, you know, story masters in the creative space.
Maybe we need a Slack channel for that too. So I mean, that's something we do. Well, I guess we're at the top of the hour. So we'll go ahead and I guess continue the conversation, hopefully in the Slack channel. I mean, this is like just an amazing project, and it's exciting to know how you're documenting it out and to be able to hear you tell the story of the story, which I think is awesome too. So I guess everybody have a great day. We hope to have Katie come back again soon, and hopefully Toddy got the gremlins worked out on the computer, although I think I pretty much jinxed my own computer by looking at new computers. Go figure, huh?
Oh,
good.
Quetzalcoatl posted the links for membership and the Slack channel and the conference. So We didn't talk as much about that as we do. I'm sorry, I get to rambling and talking about story, and
That's the beauty of it, though. Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you. Have a great day, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. And we've got a couple links in here too for some of the tools that Katie's using. And Katie, I know, is very amenable to people reaching out to ask questions. In between her, how many videos are you doing? Oh, good, great. Okay, all right. Well, yeah.
It will release on the 7th.
Yeah.
So
you got a great.
Yes, reach out to me. I love a good distraction when I get busy like that. But Twitter, Katie Stroud Pro.
Cool.
You can email Katie at katiestroud.com.
Perfect.
And thank you guys. Thanks, Alex, Alan, Myra. Moth Month. I don't know if I can make that, Myra. I would love to, but 45 videos is a lot.
Reach out to this group.
We'll see how.
That's what we're all here for. You never know what kind of helpers you might find here. So, all good.
Yes.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.